Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon to you. So excited to have you guys on this call today. Today, we will be discussing demand planning resources and just demand planning in general within Tempus. So before we get started here, I want to do two quick things. Can someone use the raise your hand feature if one, you can see my screen? Just want to make sure everyone can do that. Thank you. And then that also means everyone can hear me. So perfect. Want to make sure we have no technical difficulties today. Let's see if that works. So as everyone is rolling, getting on here today, I'll go ahead and get started with our housekeeping items. So again, today we are discussing demand planning resources and just demand planning in general within Tempus. So we will be going over specifically those generic roles, demand planning resources as we call them, and then also that demand planning data set that is within your projects, but you may have that hidden for now. I'll go ahead and show you how to unhide that, but just kind of give you an idea of what's available to you within Tempus. We'll also go over some reporting as well, just so you can kind of see where these demand planning resources come into play, and resource requests as well. We do see both items paired together quite often. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Looks like we have the majority of everyone on. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. All right, so a few things. I am running on Tempus version 6.0. That is our most current version. Just for you guys here on the call, we are getting ready to release 6.1 in the coming weeks. We're really excited about that. So you'll be getting the webinar invite from me here soon, and you'll also be getting our release notes, so no worries there. I'm on version 6.0. If you are not and you see something you are interested in, please reach out to me. We can definitely go ahead and get you upgraded. And I have already built out many of the titles that we're going to be using, projects that we're going to be using within Tempus, but I will be showing you how to create as well. And I tried to use titles that are common, so please, just take the time to kind of think through how could this be effective in your organization. All right, well, with that said, so what is the purpose of demand planning and why is it important? So here at Prosymmetry, we see demand planning as really kind of the not yet active, not yet live projects that you have, but you still need to get them in the system. You need to see, how do those play with your current live projects? Demand planning, we really see it come into play with the what if scenario planning. So if that's something you use often, you can set up these proposal projects with these generic role-based resources and compare the two and really see, where do these projects come into play. So it's a really powerful item, and not everyone uses it, which is perfectly fine too. It's definitely pairs well with your process if your process does have this early planning period. And if that's something that you hope to introduce, well, here's how you could do that in Tempus, and then we can definitely have the conversation of the best approach there beyond Tempus. So with that said, we are going to navigate to resource management, and we are going to take a look at our demand planning resources. So I have a specific view set up to view the ones that are in my system. So those demand planning resources, like I said, are those role-based resources. So for some organizations, you may have HTML developer, maybe it's Python. You may have a senior product engineer, a senior technical engineer, project manager for your different divisions or your roles. Really those individuals who, I shouldn't say individuals, those teams that need to be working on those projects, those roles that need to be working on the projects, but maybe you don't know just who yet. That's really the power of these demand planning resources. So we are going to go ahead and create one real quick. All right, and here I'm just going to say junior software engineer. So why am I getting that granular, junior software engineer? These demand planning resources are going to be available to all of your users. So if your project managers are in there and they would like to plan for a junior software engineer, it is best that the resource is named that. So that way they don't have to just assume that this is, just engineer is the same across the organization. So we have our name, We have our capacity date set up. Not a huge item for these demand planning resources, but always good to have. And then you'll also notice here that as of right now, this demand planning resource is carrying capacity. So we have our capacity defined as 1 FTE equals 8 hours. So you'll notice that they have 1 FTE for the duration of their time. However, when we flag this resource as a demand planning resource, that capacity now becomes null. So demand planning resources carry no capacity across your system. And this is for a very specific reason. When you are doing your reporting, when you're trying to see where your needs are, these demand planning resources are going to show you don't have the capacity planned for this role yet, but you have it allocated to a project. You have assignments waiting to be filled with this demand planning resource. So say you need 2 of these, junior software engineers, project manager A needs 1, project manager B needs 1. They're going to allocate and assign this demand planning resource to the project, and maybe they say they need 1 FTE for the next 6 months. If both project managers are doing that, it is going to show up in your reporting as you have a need for 2 of these. From there, if you have the resource request workflow set up, you can switch those out. You can also do just a resource replace as well. So a lot of options here, but that's really why they carry no capacity. We don't want to inflate your capacity. We don't want to account for anything that you do not have. So 0 capacity for these demand planning resources. All right, and we are going to go ahead and click save. So next, with your demand planning resources, you can see here, let's go back to this view. Okay, now let's look, where are these resources allocated to right now? So as you all hopefully know, we do have the cross-project allocation screen down here. For this example, I have all of these demand resources in the demand data set. We'll talk more about that here soon. And you can see, okay, project manager of research and development is on these 2 projects right now. So those are the 2 that they need to be replaced off, or they need to have their resource request filled. So that's going to give you insight on where they are right now, in addition to many of your reports, maybe your what if scenario planning. So you'll be able to see that in a multitude of ways. Okay, so demand planning resources in practice, right? Let's look at a project here. So I've created 3 specific projects for this webinar, or I apologize, 2 specific projects for this webinar. And we're going to kind of see a combination of both demand planning resources and the demand data set. But of course, before I even get started, what is the demand data set? Tempus gives you 2 data sets to hold your allocations in and create those assignments. So the demand data set, we often see it as that pre-active, so your proposed projects, your projects that you're planning for, maybe a project that hasn't even gotten to like a business review yet, but you just kind of want to see if we were to do this, where does it live? You are more than welcome to put this in your allocation data set, but the demand data set holds this information in a way that kind of captures it in its own data set, so you don't have to set out specific filters in your reports, since almost all of our users use that allocation data set. It just kind of lives on its own. Of course, you can report and compare the 2, definitely possible to do. So like I said, this demand data set, we often see it for like pre-planning, pre-forecasting, initial ideas, initial thoughts, and that pairs really, really well with these demand planning resources. So for product 1A, I know that I need a project manager from resource and development. As you can see here, I know that I need a business analyst and a financial analyst as well. Let's go ahead and check this out. And let's say that roughly this is the time that we need them for. Perfect. We have that planned. You can see here, due to the purple icon, it's a demand planning resource. You have that all set. So now, what if project gets approved? You're ready to move forward. Maybe you're ready to start initiating those resource requests, which we'll go over that here in a second. You're just going to copy this demand data set to allocation. So you'll see here your allocation data will be overwritten. Do you want to proceed with this change? And yes, we do. And then from there, your resources are now in this allocation data set, and action can be taken against them. So let's also add, I know for a fact that this one, all right, let's save and check in. And now all of those resource requests have been triggered and are now firing off. So this means your project is no longer out of that proposal or out of that planning stage. You now want the resource managers to go into and say, hey, this is my demand for a financial analyst. Here are the resources I have to pair them together. So let's walk through that a little bit. And I apologize, I will be jumping screens here as we get organized. So this is the user. I'm sure you all are familiar with Matt Baker on my team. I have him set up in here as our resource request approver, our resource manager, if you will. So here we'll notice he has 3 resource requests now to fulfill. And we were working in product A1. And we see the financial analyst and the business analyst. He is the approver, or the resource manager, I should say, for these 2 resources, which is why he's only seeing those 2. And we can click in there, and now we can say, okay, the business analyst, I have this is the request for them. I can now go in and do this, replace and fulfill this request as needed. The resource request workflow, we've done webinars on them in the past. We'll do more in the future. So I'm not going to go into that right now, but I just wanted you to see, where these demand planning resources really come into play and what you can do with them, just because they allow you to get into that additional level of granularity that maybe you did not have before. All right. So another item I wanted to discuss today. I showed you what the demand data set looks like with your demand planning resources, but I also want to show you what it can look like with just your named resources as well. So we're going to create a project. We are going to give it a quick little start date here, nothing crazy. End date can be the end of May. Cannot believe it's already May. So say I'm an organization, we don't use the demand planning resources, we have a pretty good hold on who does what, and we don't really have that official process set up. Once you check out the project, you can assign your name resources in the demand data set just for these planning purposes as well. So 100% you are able to do that. Again, this just allows you another level of planning and another level of granularity where you're not necessarily doing in that allocation data set, maybe that active data set, but you're just doing it kind of behind the scenes. And then from there, you can report on it as well. So we're going to go ahead and just save this and check in. Does not really matter. And we are going to look at reports. So within report management, and I have created a very specific folder for us here that I don't think everything is in. All right, so I've created this pivot grid report. We just did a webinar. Matt hosted the webinar on pivot grids and the resource allocation reports. So please go ahead and check that out. It is in the Help Center under the report management videos there. But here I have all of my demand planning resources, and they're planned in demand hours, right? So here I know that for anyone, my business analyst demand planning resource, right now they have planned allocation. So those more active projects, they have almost 3,000 hours there. Whereas in the demand data set, they have about 400. So this is a quick and easy way to kind of see, okay, what information do we have? What's outstanding? What do we need to plan for? Due to how I have my report set up, I know that I can go into, okay, FY22 site compliance, that's where those demand hours are. Maybe that's something, I would hope no one's ever putting off compliance. Maybe that's something that I know we just can't do right now. So not really going to make any changes there. It's just good to know that that information is present and available. All right, so next. So next I created a resource allocation report to kind of show you on the projects that our demand planning resources are allocated to, and really, you know, what is the allocation demand there. So one thing from this report, we often see our users compare the allocation to the capacity. That is set up in this report. You'll notice here we have planned demand and the net capacity. This net capacity, though, I have it filtered to only show demand planning resources. If you recall what I said in the beginning, no capacity is shown for these resources, so there will not be a line there. That is something that I think is extremely important to understand. And I just wanted to show you what that visualization could look like. Whereas, if I create the same report, let me make some edits here to make sure that it is truly the same. All right. So same report. I have these resources. I have their net capacity in here as well. This time, though, I'm including the specific departments that these demand planning resources relate to. So your business analyst, your financial analyst, your accounting and finance team. So that way you can see, okay, we have way too much capacity in this other area right now. So let's go ahead and ignore that. And this is where our capacity line stands for our need. So you can get really visual with this, and you can compare, and depending on your setup, if you make sure that your departments are connected or your business units are connected to the demand planning resources, you can really compare the two to see, you know, where are you over allocated, where are you under allocated, where are your needs. That's really the power of these generic role-based resources, is really just showing you your needs, what's coming down the pipeline. You know, do you have to hire contractors? Maybe maybe you don't need as many you know, analysts for something. So it really gives you the power to better understand what's going on with your future projects as well. And then, of course, this information is going to be available within the what if planning as well. We're not going to go into that right now, just because the what if planning is a whole can of worms. It's a very, very powerful tool that we will be hosting another webinar on probably in a month or so. But these demand planning resources, you can also see them within the what if scenario as well. So a few things with all of that. We walked through how to allocate resources in that single project allocation grid. So this one right here, we walked through how to do this. You can also manage your allocation, your allocation of your demand planning resources in the bulk project allocation screens as well. So you'll notice here we have our business analyst, and actually I am going to go ahead and set up a filter. So demand planning is true. So now you'll see that all of our demand planning resources in the system are right here. And these are all of the projects that they are assigned to right now. So another great way to just kind of take a temperature of, you know, where is this information at? Where does it live? You can see that right here. And then, of course, you can resource replace from this screen too, as you can in the single project allocation grid. So this is an alternative to resource request. We typically see resource request used for another layer of just governance, process, really just kind of giving, it's really splitting up that project management and resource management role. So if you have your resource managers, your functional managers who can approve the assignments, the allocation to the projects, that's really what resource request is for. However, this resource replace does something very, very similar, where I know that maybe Audrey is a business analyst, so I am just going to go ahead and replace her here. Now, you won't see her, you'll see her show up, and it's been replaced. So this is another screen where those demand planning resources can definitely give you more insight into what's going on with what's needed, what's demanded, and where your supply and demand kind of live there. So demand planning resources. It's a pretty, I don't want to call it simple, but once you kind of think how it can be used at your organization, what the layers are there, it's very simple to set up. It is very simple to manage. Those resource attributes are very important for tying the demand planning resources to your named resources as well. You can report off of them, you can allocate them in the allocation grid, in the demand data set, in the block project areas as well. So wide use across the system for these demand planning resources and the demand data set as well. So think of this really as your pre-planning, like I said, your pre-active, pre-go live, in-process projects. And with that said, I knew this was going to be a quick webinar today. I'm not seeing any questions come in. However, if you have any questions on how you can apply the demand data set or even the demand planning resources to your process at your organization, definitely reach out. I would love to have a conversation about this just to see if it's something that's possible, because I do think it provides that extra level of organization and clarity into your organization's needs and where you are. All right, still no questions. I hope that's a good thing. Thank you all for joining me today. Always a pleasure to sit down and be able to kind of talk through Tempus's functionalities with you. And we will talk soon. Have a great day, everyone.